Good morning and welcome to our Automotive 30% Club Inspiring Easy event to celebrate International Women's Day and the theme Choose to Challenge. I'm also going to launch my book, which is called Change the Game, the Leader's Route Map to a Winning Gender Balanced Business. So it would help if everybody keeps their cameras off and their audio muted, just to preserve bandwidth, but also to ensure that our speakers can be heard well. We actually have over 50 participants already joining us today, so it will certainly help if everybody can do that. So later, you're going to have the chance to chat in breakout groups, and you'll hear from our panel of very inspiring women. And they're going to talk about what women can do to help themselves in their careers, but also to help others. But first, I'm pleased to welcome Erin Baker, award-winning automotive journalist, and she's going to ask me about the book. So please, Erin, can you join me on screen?
I think I'm there. I feel like I'm here. Am I here? Good. You'd think a year into this, we'd all be sorted, wouldn't you? Right. Well, thank you very much. And congratulations, Julia. First of all, great book. I'm going to actually start by just delving into the introduction. I was having a read through the other night and I was really grabbed by this sentence. We usually overestimate what we can achieve in the short term and underestimate what we can achieve in the longer term. Now, it seems to me like you've achieved in the short and the longer term, but to kind of, to take your achievements today and just take a step back, actually. And I think we all know you in the context of today, but not all of us know about your background and what brought you to this point, because, you know, the title of this book, Change the Game, is a hugely bold statement, and that's got to be backed up by a bold personality. So what's your background that kind of led you to where you are today?
Well, I suppose if we start a long time ago, I was bitten by the bug of the automotive industry when I was about 8 years old. So my father actually ran a home servicing business. And so I would help him answer the telephone, to take bookings, and in the holidays I'd go out and do the service check sheet for him. So later in life, when I went to university and Perry's Motor Group came along to look for graduate trainees, it seemed an obvious choice for me to join the motor trade. I didn't see that there was anything, you know, with regards to women working in the automotive industry. And so that was really where I started out. I was very lucky in that the dealership that I worked in Perry's Motor Sales, was actually pretty gender balanced for the time. It was based in Doncaster. It was in the early 90s. And yeah, we had female sales manager, we had a service reception manager. Quite a few of the management were women. And so it was not till some time later that I discovered that that actually wasn't the norm. And so in terms of going back to the question about changing the game, when I started, I didn't feel that there was much of a need to change it. It was only later on, having moved on through my career in Ford and worked in Germany and Spain, and came back to the UK in around you know, the mid-2000s, to find that there seemed to be very few women working in the sector, and that not much had progressed since that I was working there in the 90s. So it was at that point that I decided that somebody had to do something about it.
And this is quite a kind of personal question, I guess, but one that might affect a huge number of us listening on this call. You know, I'm like you, I'm a woman in automotive and have been vast majority of my career, but it's not just I found people in the workplace as well, but friends and family. Did you get, when people say to you around a dinner table, back in the days when we could all get together around a dinner table, you know, what do you do for a living? And you say, well, I work in the automotive industry. Did you kind of, from friends and family, go, oh, that's a bit odd, isn't it?
Well, my family didn't, obviously, because they were connected to the sector. But yeah, I have to say, friends, particularly as a graduate joining the sector, was, you know, it certainly wasn't something that they would have considered doing. But interestingly enough, I then became the bridge, if you like, for quite a few of my friends to walk across to join automotive. So you know, Nicola, that works in our team today, she joined automotive shortly afterwards, and so did another one of our friends. So I think sometimes it is just about making it known to people that in fact the jobs in the sector are fun. You know, they can be very enjoyable. There's a huge variety. There is a you know, something in there that can enable you to progress quickly if you are a high performing individual, and I think that's something that we need to share more out there.
Yeah, because we talk, don't we, about kind of building internal pipelines and we'll come back onto founding the Automotive 30% Club in a minute, but we talk about kind of what we do internally to lift and so on, but it's as much, isn't it, about, as you say, providing that bridge, reaching out the handshake to people, women outside of automotive, and saying, actually, there are great careers in automotive, come into the industry, you know, come in, the water's fine.
Yeah, and I think it's if more of us did that, you know, I think it would create another kind of talent pool that we can tap into.
Yeah. So you came back and in 2000s and actually the landscape had changed a bit, or more people were asking questions, or it just felt like, God, where had all the women gone? Why was it just suddenly apparently more men? Was it that? And you thought, okay, now's the time to kind of step up gear a bit and do something more?
Well, at that point, I'd started to teach on the university degree programs at Loughborough University, automotive executive programs that I'd actually helped to establish when I was working in Ford in the 90s. And it struck me that there were still no women coming on the programs to take leadership development. So I decided to explore that a bit more. At that point, I was looking after my children. I wasn't working in a corporate environment anymore, or in the, you know, deeply within the sector. But I got in touch with some of my old peers from Ford Motor Company that were now in senior roles in across the UK. So the managing director of Volkswagen Group and the president of Toyota and president of Kia were all people that I worked with at Ford. And I spoke to them and said, so why haven't things changed? And their response was very much, well, they hadn't really noticed that there was an issue, or that there was, if you like, there was an opportunity that was being missed. And so they all agreed to join the club at that stage but I said, look, I will take responsibility for making this happen, because nobody kind of within one of the companies could do that. And they knew me personally, that I would deliver on something like this, you know, that if I was that passionate about achieving the goal, that it would happen. And the thing that I would say with regards to the theme of International Women's Day in terms of choose to challenge, this was really what I decided we had to challenge this as a situation, as the status quo. We can't just accept it and kind of passively let nothing happen. And also I was told by some people when I started out that the only way I could achieve this would be to ask permission. And it would be to ask permission of the SMMT or the IMI or the NFGA, and to be making sure they were on board. And I just made the decision not to do that, mainly because I'm just the kind of person that never asks for permission to do anything that I believe is right. But also I thought, well, if they were going to really do something about this, they would have already done it. So it's clearly not high on their agenda yet. So I just thought, no, I'm going to set up a completely separate entity that does not have any, if you like, obligations to any of the institutions that are already here, and work with the leaders of the sector directly to try and achieve the change.
It's quite hard, isn't it? Because with most movements like this, most movements for change, you've got to get to the point where you reach critical mass, haven't you? And then you get the momentum behind you and it starts to flow and become easier. And so often with these things, the first days and the first months or years even can be the hardest to kind of get people on board, get the momentum shifting. And I think it can be quite tricky for women in those circumstances in particular, because, you know, with a woman pushing and, you know, chasing up on emails, chasing up on phone calls or for meetings, women can be labelled of, oh, she's nagging again, you know, there's that blimmin' annoying woman. Whereas men, men aren't often accused of nagging or kind of, did you get much kind of worse than pushback? Did you get much kind of apathy in the early days? And was it hard to get the momentum going?
I would say it was mixed, really. So obviously in the early days, I went round asking people if they were going to support and if they wanted to join the club. And I would get a mixed response. You know, some of them was like just very polite, but you know, maybe this is not our thing, or we're not really into women's equality, we're more into diversity, which was a strange response from some of them. But I have to say the majority seemed to, in some respects, feel relieved that somebody was going to take on the task and create something that everyone could jump onto, and sort of create this collaborative framework for this. So, I mean, I did have the only negative response I had was from somebody that, you know, a senior manager that was extremely aggressive and very rude to me in a public forum, which shocked me, you know, in terms of why he would feel that he had to be so so aggressive and so opposed to what I was doing. But luckily, there were quite a few witnesses to that who then said, you know, this is a reflection now of him and not you. And
yeah.
So
I kind of often think that I'd rather take rudeness than apathy. Apathy is the harder thing to overcome sometimes, isn't it?
yeah.
Moving on slightly to the timing of the book coming out and the last 12 months that we've had, and, you know, what a year for everyone, what a year for automotive. You know, we've had the pandemic, we've got Brexit, we've got electrification, we've got all these challenges facing automotive. And I think, you know, the response given the past 12 months, often when people and corporations and individuals and workplaces are faced with difficult political, social and financial times, the tendency is to kind of consolidate, to pull up the drawbridge, to say, well, we don't want to be bold and brave at this particular moment in time. There's too much at stake. We don't know what the landscape looks like ahead. There's too much uncertainty. So that Choose to Challenge, you know, International Women's Day and Change the Game, your book, is all about, now is the time, it's always the time to take the next step and to look around and be bold and brave. But it would be easy during this point, wouldn't it, to kind of consolidate and for companies to say, oh, now's not the time.
And actually, I've been amazed and really pleased that hasn't happened. So although, you know, in March, when everything looked very uncertain and people were being furloughed and the country seemed to shut down totally, you know, obviously everything went rather quiet at that stage. But from the point of coming back after that, in some respects, there seems to be even more energy being allocated to this, because my message has always been that this is employing more women and bringing their talents and skills and their complementary characteristics to a business makes a business more successful. So when you are looking to transform your business to become a 21st century high-performing team, you need to have this gender balance. And luckily, you know, the leaders of the sector are beginning to realise that and are now putting quite a lot of energy, resource and budget into hiring more women and retaining the women. And also, most importantly, they are recalibrating the environment to make sure that women will thrive. Because it's one thing saying let's hire more women, but the most important thing is, well, how will the environment accommodate that, and how will the processes and policies that are linked to an organization that have been designed around the white men for 100 years be adapted to suit a much broader type of employee? And that's what they're doing now.
Great. Well, I'm being whispered at quietly digitally, say our time is up already on this part of it. So over to you.